Coming up,
The freedom of the seas is under threat.
a show of force in the Pacific,
Launch an aircraft, shoot them.
unlike the world has ever seen.
It's as frightening as it is exhilarating.
But will China get the message?
Doesn't really matter in the real world situation.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Showing off might not be a conventional military tactic, but it is very useful. And it's exactly what the Defence Forces of the United States and 28 of its allies, including Australia, are currently doing on and around the Hawaiian Islands. RIMPAC 2024, as it's called, is an extraordinary spectacular of the world's most lethal weaponry. And let me tell you, for the uninitiated, it's loud, menacing, and quite overwhelming. For this military coalition, it's also intended to send a clear message to its would-be adversaries. Mess with us at your peril. If anyone ever needed a close-up view of why the world should avoid going to war, this has surely got to be it. We're in Hawaii, where it's usually paradise. But for the last few weeks, it's been a fury of firepower that's as terrifying as it is impressive. This is the biggest military exercise in history.
It is. You have 29 nations with all common interests that are here operating together so that we are better able to deter conflict or aggression and ready to counter that if required. And by having that ability to respond, potential adversaries can say, you know what, there are consequences for actions, and today's not the day.
But tomorrow could be. And that's what drives Vice Admiral John Wade, who's running this huge operation.
The world, but especially the Indo-Pacific, it's a dangerous and complex area. There's challenges with China, with Russia, with North Korea.
What we're about to see is how the US and its allies will fight back if war breaks out in the Pacific. This region is under enormous threat, especially from China. It's growing increasingly aggressive, antagonising its neighbours by sending warships and aircraft where they're not allowed. Does the thought of potential conflict keep you awake at night?
It does. It does because everything is connected here. 50% of the world's population, 50% of the world's natural resources, 80% of global trade. And that's why we have our military, not only the United States, but our allies and partners here working together, all with common interests to preserve the integrity of this region.
We have 7 souls, 3+30 and fuel.
An hour off the coast of Hawaii, we land on the USS Carl Vinson. It's one of 11 nuclear-powered supercarriers in America's arsenal.
It is an adventure every day. As you can imagine, a ship like this with 5,000 sailors, it's a 24-hour operation.
What's it like to live, work and sleep on board?
Busy. We have about 80 aircraft in total.
Captain Matthew Thomas is the commanding officer of the Vinson. He started out flying a Hawkeye E2, like this one, but never guessed he'd end up in charge of an entire aircraft carrier. Your heart belongs in there.
My heart belongs in there, but my mind and body and everything are here on the ship. When I was a kid, back in the 80s, I saw Top Gun, and that's what got me interested in the Navy and wanting to be a pilot.
These constant moving pieces.
But I saw Top Gun and said, that's what I want to do. I want to fly airplanes, and I want to land on an aircraft carrier. And so here I am, a kid still living out his childhood dream.
Why is this ship the envy of every other nation?
It's the capabilities that it brings. We can sail anywhere that international law allows, and we can fly anywhere international law allows, and do it for an indefinite period of time.
Even though this is one of the biggest warships in the world, you can't help but feel like a tiny drop in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The runway isn't just short, it's also constantly moving. So the thought of taking off and landing here is as frightening as it is exhilarating.
It's kind of like you're dressing up to be like a superhero. It's kind of fun to like put on all the gear, but the second the gloves go on and the mask comes down, it's like it's all business from there, just kind of focusing on what you're about to go do.
Meet Lieutenant Hunter Coultis. Call sign, Sugar Lips.
The call signs are a little bit sacred in the military, specifically the Navy itself. So I was raised in South Texas, so I kind of had that Southern politeness to me. So a lot of people thought I was very, very smooth when I talked to them, and I was talking my way into or out of situations. So I kind of got the call sign Sugar Lips at that point.
So everybody would think you have the coolest job in the world, but what you do is incredibly serious and dangerous.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, there's a little bit of fear, I think, in every single flight that you do, and I think it's a healthy amount of fear to kind of keep you safe.
Up on the flight deck,
Looking for number 6.
Sugar Lips flies the F-35C Lightning II, the most advanced stealth fighter in the world. What is it like inside that cockpit?
It's quiet at first, you know, you're getting taxied up to the catapult. Then you'll see him bend down, you know it's coming, he'll touch the flight deck, and then you just kind of sit there with your hands on the rails, just waiting for the acceleration that is the cat stroke.
Watching it looks insane.
It does.
It's the rumble on the floor is the thing that, yeah, and then the heat that comes.
Absolutely, yeah. The experience that you physically feel in the cockpit, it never gets old, and you've done it, you know, 200 times, and you just have this huge grin on your face as you're just hurtling towards the end of the boat.
Heads up at the bow, heads up at the waist. Stand clear of all catapults, catwalks, and shot lines while launching aircraft. Shoot them.
The roar of takeoff vibrates through your entire body. One by one, every few minutes, they catapult into the sky.
Okay, copy.
From the bridge, Captain Thomas directs the supercharged show. Are they practicing things like dogfighting?
They do. You know, they would practice dogfighting. They would practice going out and looking for other ships. Our helicopters are out there. They might be looking for submarines. Our E-2s are airborne. They do command and control, so they are kind of directing the fight airborne.
But even more delicate than launching into the sky is when America's fiercest fighters come back. The pilots need to catch the hook hanging off the back of their jet on one of 4 ropes on the flight deck. They land at full throttle in case they fail and need to take off again.
You do what you have to do to get behind the boat, and then you have about 20 seconds where you're just purely focused on nothing else in the entire world. And then the world just slows down as you focus on landing on the boat and hopefully catching a wire.
Have you ever missed?
Absolutely, not often, but it does happen every now and then.
And how often do you think about, well, today you're training, but tomorrow it could be the real thing?
Absolutely, yeah. So every flight that we do has a purpose. You know, we are using every minute in the air that we can really to become experts for tomorrow, just in case, you know, we're called upon to answer the call.
And if they are called, the Vinson is armed and ready. What sort of weapons do you have on board?
We have a whole mix of weapons, both air-to-air missiles, air-to-ground missiles. We have bombs. We have smart bombs. We have torpedoes.
And having these sort of weapons in your arsenal, I mean, what advantage would it give you during combat?
It just helps us, obviously, to be lethal. I have zero doubt that we are fully capable to execute any mission our senior leaders ask.
Zero doubt.
Zero doubt.
The level of confidence is impressive. But coming up, is it deterring or provoking the biggest challenger in the Pacific? China.
Our ambition is not a secret.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for being out here.
Even after 38 years of service, you still can't wipe the smile off Admiral Lisa Franchetti's face.
You like flying in the helicopter? I absolutely love it.
The US Chief of Naval Operations and member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff advises the President on important military decisions.
Sometimes I have to pinch myself that we get paid.
But nothing beats the thrill of flying out to sea off the coast of Hawaii. In the White House or on warships, which one do you prefer?
Oh, my favorite place is to be on a warship. I love being on this warship right now. And, you know, I grew up as a ship driver, and I really enjoy being at sea. So it's been a real pleasure to be out here and get the chance to visit with all the sailors and experience a little bit of what I used to do for a living.
Today, as part of the RIMPAC operation, we're helicopter hopping across warships from South Korea, Japan, and New Zealand. And the four-star Admiral's greatest weapon is her charm. She's reminding each country why America is their firmest friend, as China continues to muscle its way into the Pacific.
These are very turbulent times. The freedom of the seas is under threat.
You said today on the ships in the announcements that the Indo-Pacific is under threat. What do you mean?
Well, I think if you look around all of our oceans right now, the rules-based international order that has really supported global prosperity for about the last 3/4 of a century is under threat everywhere we look. You know, about 70% of the world is oceans, about 80% of the people in the world live near a coast, and 90% of trade goes across those oceans. And we need to make sure that they are free and open for everyone to use.
There's something spectacular about flying so low and so close to the sea. But beyond the buzz, this is an extremely important mission for the US Navy's top brass. What are your fears for this region?
My most important fear is that for some reason we may lose some of our partners and our partnerships. And I think the biggest message is allies and partners matter, and we all matter to each other.
Allies matter, of course, but so do your adversaries. What do you want them to take away from this exercise?
Well, I think that's what the adversaries see. We have allies and partners. Adversaries don't.
The strong bond between the US and its allies is just as clear and intimidating back on land.
The things they're going to hear are heavy effective fire, which means the enemy has a high volume of fire.
On the eastern coast of Oahu, US Marines are pushing their partners from Indonesia, Mexico, Ecuador and Tonga to their absolute limits.
This scenario right here would be they're closing on an enemy position.
It's fast and frantic, but most confronting is the sound of gunfire at such close range.
Moving! Heavy fire! Heavy fire!
And that's exactly how Major Sam Otavio wants it to feel for the shooters too.
Right, you want to try to design the conditions as close to the battlefield as you can. A little bit of a language barrier, which is realistic to when we're in the Pacific and we're fighting with these partners. Like that language barrier is going to be very real. It's going to be something we have to work through. So it's awesome that we get to train out here with them like this.
No fires! No fires!
No fire!
There's no doubt these war games are an impressive and at times terrifying display of what the US and its allies can do. But China is having none of it. They say, far from protecting peace and security, this show of force only puts our region at greater risk.
Let's go. Hit it again. Hit it again.
I think it's a kind of art of performance, yeah?
Jibo is a retired Chinese senior colonel. From Beijing, he's paying close attention to the enormous military might on display in Hawaii. Does the thought of coming up against that force worry you?
No, I don't think so, because Why should we be worried? We should not be worried at all. If it is about China as a potential threat in a real situation, I don't believe there are many countries that would wholeheartedly follow the United States.
Do you really believe that many of America's allies would actually side with China if a war was to break out?
I believe those countries, those allies of the United States that would be involved in a war would be less than a handful. I think that would be the worst fear, to see the two largest economies fighting against each other.
Well, it's clear that the adversaries are watching. There's many nations that are responding to our actions here.
Oh, really? I've been focused on submarine maintenance.
As the commander of the RIMPAC exercise, Vice Admiral John Wade doesn't shy away from the point of the entire operation.
To preserve peace and stability and to deter conflict, you need to do that through strength and got to practice. I call it sets and reps, working together.
Sets and reps. I like it. What is it?
Sets and reps are just building muscle memory, and then to be able to, over time, with increasing complexity, work together so that we can be better prepared to deter aggression or to counter it if required.
China is confident about itself, and China is not panicking.
But the difference is the US has allies and China doesn't.
That is almost true, but it doesn't really matter. China is more than 200 times stronger than American shipbuilding industry in terms of capabilities. Our ambition is not a secret.
All right, great to see you all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Keeping the peace in the Pacific could depend on who Americans elect as their next president in 4 months' time.
Thank you again. Have a good exercise. Thank you so much.
Admiral Lisa Franchetti knows that person will turn to her for advice on how to prevent another global conflict. Come November, you might have a new Commander-in-Chief. Regardless of who wins, will America's bond with the Pacific be as strong?
I'm confident that our relationships and the strategic importance of this region will never change. You can never take any relationship with a partner for granted. And so we always need to be here, we always need to be exercising, and we always need to be listening to our partners.
Right now, the US has no greater partner than Australia.
One of 11 Squadron's finest. It's a fine-looking aircraft, isn't it?
Coming up, our top job at the world's biggest war games. It's mesmerising to watch.
Wow.
The world's most powerful fighter jets in perfect formation. For such destructive machines, they float with elegance and poise, like a ballet in the sky. Their mission today is risky and difficult, refuelling at 35,000 feet.
We like to joke that we're flying gas stations, and I'd say that's the best way to put it. We are filled with fuel, and whatever planes want to come up and get some gas, we're able to give that to them.
Mackenzie Macklin is a senior airman on the C-135 Stratotanker. It's carrying 136,000 litres of fuel. At the tender age of 23, it's her job to control the boom pole and basket the fighter jets need to latch onto to fill up.
This is one of the few times where you'd have someone who is maybe not as high-ranking in charge of an operation like this.
It's a tense time as the best of the US Navy's air wing line up around the tanker.
We call them like a mama hen and chicks, and coming up, so they're like little ducklings and stuff like that trying to come up. Oh, it's pretty fun.
Are you the mama hen?
Oh, yeah.
How dangerous is this operation?
About as dangerous as you'd imagine. Anything closer than 10 feet is where you start thinking, okay, they're getting a little close.
It's all American planes today, but this crew will also work with foreign pilots to practice refueling as if they were fighting a war together. Every move they make has been carefully planned by Australian Air Commodore Louise Desjardins. She's in charge of all the air operations here at RIMPAC, the biggest military exercise the world has ever seen. How do you keep track of all those aircraft in such a small space?
We have a big team and great systems. You can't do modern warfare on your own, and I think having partners that you can trust and work with is really important these days.
And if we don't do that and a conflict breaks out, what situations do you face if you're not ready?
Well, I honestly, I hope it's a situation that we never find ourselves in, and that's our job and our responsibility to make sure that we don't.
A huge part of Australia's defence relies on this plane, the P-8 Poseidon.
It's a fine-looking aircraft, isn't it?
It certainly is. Tell me about
it. It looks like a commercial jet, but on board, it's a different story. The Poseidon carries top-secret technology as it patrols the world's oceans to detect and track enemies below.
It's looking for any surface vessel or a submarine, and you can see at the back of the aircraft the chutes where the sonobuoys would come out for, and it uses that to listen underwater for any submarine activity. It carries harpoons and it carries torpedoes as well, so it has a strike capability.
How much damage can those weapons do?
It can take out a submarine, it can contribute to taking out a surface vessel.
But Australia isn't the only one building up its arsenal. Former senior colonel in the Chinese military, Jiabo, says his country is too. China is increasing its military presence all over the Pacific, especially in the hotly disputed South China Sea near Taiwan. China is putting its warships in places it's not welcome.
Well, this is certainly not true. We are sitting everywhere because the Chinese Navy is becoming a global navy, and right now we need to get familiarized with all the uncharted waters.
Many would say that your ships are getting far too close to places like Taiwan.
Well, Taiwan is part of China, so therefore it's not a problem. Yeah, we do not consider Taiwan has a territorial sea or whatever.
Does it concern you, the threat that's building in the Indo-Pacific when it comes to China?
I think any threat that's building on a military basis is a concern for us, and China is not the only player in the Indo-Pacific environment. You know, Australia has a very competent defence force, but I hope that we don't have to employ it in a way that we're practising here at RIMPAC.
Our Defence Force has sent a guided missile destroyer, the HMAS Sydney, along with 320 troops to Hawaii. But many believe that's not enough, given it makes up less than 2% of the 25,000 people from around the world who are participating. It's creating some concern that Australia might be underprepared if a conflict was to break out.
I think that would not be the case if you looked at the entire program of events that the ADF was involved in over this current 12-month period. We have key leadership positions filled and a strong contingent of key personnel throughout all the headquarters.
Are you surprised by Australia's lack of presence at this year's RIMPAC, given the threat on our doorstep?
Well, a few hundred people, a ship and an airplane is very capable.
Vice Admiral John Wade is in charge of the entire RIMPAC exercise, headquartered at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii.
It really grounds me. It grounds me because it reminds me of the consequences of conflict.
Why, after so many years of service, are you still so passionate about what you do?
When I was a young junior officer, I had my first child. He was trying to figure out what I did, and I said, Daddy helps people. And I really believe that. It is reinforced for me why what I do is so important, to work with others with a common goal of ensuring peace and stability throughout the vital Indo-Pacific region.
Back on the USS Carl Vinson, it's also front of mind for Lieutenant Hunter Coultis. Like so many practicing at RIMPAC, for him, there's a strange irony. They spend their life training to unleash the most lethal weapons on Earth, in the hope they never have to.
What does the word peace mean to you?
Peace. Peace means my wife. honestly. Going back home, waking up in the morning, just having some coffee with my child, that's peace to me.
Do you miss them?
I do. It's a difficult thing, going and being on the boat and being away. But I've been, given the opportunity to fly, to do this great job. Not everybody does. Sorry.
You sacrifice, being with your family to serve your country. How important is that to you?
It's extremely important. I've been given the opportunity to do something that not a lot of people have been able to do, and so I just, take every day for what it's worth, and try and do my best when I can to fulfill my duties to my country as well as to my family.
Hello, I'm Dimity Clancy. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.